Somewhere in America right now, someone is lying awake at 2 a.m., scrolling through their phone, heart racing, reading headline after headline about deportation raids, tariffs, executive orders. They're not a political activist. They don't work in government. They just can't stop checking. And in the morning, they'll wake up exhausted, turn on the news, and do it again. This isn't rare. This isn't dramatic exaggeration for a video. Therapists across the country are reporting the exact same pattern over and over in patients who've never set foot in a protest or donated to a campaign. There's actually a name for what's happening to them. And once you understand the mechanism behind it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Maybe even in yourself. Let's start with the term because it's more official than you'd expect. Psychologists have started calling it Trump anxiety disorder. It's not in any diagnostic manual. It's not a clinical diagnosis you'll find in the DSM, but it's used constantly, seriously, by mental health professionals describing a very specific, very consistent set of symptoms they're seeing in their offices. The pattern includes a loss of a sense of control, a persistent, low-grade dread about what's happening in the country, compulsive checking of news and social media, racing thoughts about worst-case scenarios, and for many people, actual physical symptoms, disrupted sleep, tension headaches, a racing heart triggered by nothing more than a push notification. A Georgetown psychologist described it simply. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. People were really struggling. And her patients, she noted, weren't political activists. They were just regular people trying to live their lives while the news cycle refused to let up. So here's the actual question worth asking. Why would a presidency specifically produce this reaction, more than politics normally does? The answer isn't really about any single policy. It's about a psychological principle that's been studied for decades. Unpredictability is one of the most powerful triggers of chronic stress the human nervous system has. Your brain doesn't just respond to bad news. It responds even more intensely to news it can't predict. A clear, expected negative event is stressful, but manageable. Your brain can prepare for it. An unpredictable stream of sudden announcements, reversals, and breaking news alerts is a different category of stress entirely, because your nervous system can never fully relax. It's always braced for the next unexpected thing. This is exactly the environment that's been described by mental health researchers tracking public reaction to Trump's second term, an unpredictable, rapid, headline-driven governing style where major policy shifts, mass deportations, sudden firings, executive orders can appear with little warning. Clinical psychologist Rachel Wofford at Emory's Rollins School of Public Health put it directly. We have decades of research on what chronic stress does to people living under persistent uncertainty, and that's precisely the condition a lot of Americans describe themselves living in. Now, here's where the numbers get genuinely striking. The American Psychological Association's Stress in America survey has tracked this for years, and the data isn't subtle. 2/3 of Americans report being stressed about the future of the country. More than half say the current political climate is a significant source of stress. This isn't a fringe reaction. It's a majority experience. And importantly, it cuts across party lines. Both Democrats and Republicans report significant stress tied to the political climate, even if the specific fears driving it are different. And for certain groups, the numbers are even sharper. Following the 2024 election, crisis hotlines serving LGBTQ youth reported call volume increasing 7-fold in just the 10 days after the results, driven specifically by fear of policy rollbacks affecting their rights and safety. Federal workers, in reporting from NBC News, described overwhelming stress, panic attacks, and, in severe cases, suicidal ideation tied directly to sudden changes in their jobs and agencies. This is what makes this different from ordinary political disagreement. It's not just people being unhappy about losing an election. It's a measurable. There's a mechanism that makes this worse, and you've almost certainly participated in it without naming it. Doom scrolling. Here's the loop, and it's brutally simple. Threatening news triggers anxiety. Anxiety pushes you to seek more information because your brain believes more information will reduce uncertainty. So you keep scrolling, but each new headline delivers another hit of unpredictable, threatening information, which raises anxiety further, which lowers your threshold for what feels threatening next time, which pushes you to keep scrolling even harder. It's a feedback loop that feels like vigilance, like staying informed, like responsible citizenship. But physiologically, it's closer to repeatedly pressing a bruise to check if it still hurts. Research has consistently shown that people who repeatedly consume distressing news coverage show measurably higher anxiety and depression symptoms than those with the same political views who limit their exposure. The information itself isn't what's different. The dosage and unpredictability are.
Here's the part that might be the most important insight in this entire video. This isn't happening because people are fragile or overreacting or too sensitive, despite how often that gets said online. It's happening because human nervous systems are quite literally built to respond this way to sustained unpredictability and perceived threat. This is the same stress response system that would have kept your ancestors alive by staying alert to changing danger in their environment. It wasn't built for a 24-hour news cycle delivering an unpredictable stream of high-stakes headlines directly to a device in your pocket. In other words, if you found yourself anxious, exhausted, or unable to stop checking the news over the past year, your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's running an ancient survival system in an environment it was never designed for, one specifically characterized by rapid, high-volume, unpredictable political change.
So what do you actually do with this if this is something you're experiencing? The research here is surprisingly consistent, and none of it involves pretending the news doesn't matter or disengaging from the world entirely. The first step researchers point to is simply naming what's happening, recognizing this is doom scrolling. This is a stress response loop, rather than experiencing it as an unnamed formless dread. Naming a process gives your brain something to work with instead of raw panic. The second is deliberately limiting unpredictable exposure, not avoiding news entirely, but choosing specific, scheduled times to check it, rather than leaving yourself open to a constant, unpredictable stream of push notifications throughout the day. This alone, according to multiple studies on media consumption and anxiety, measurably reduces the psychological toll without requiring you to disengage from what's happening in the country. And the third, according to Dr. Wofford's research specifically, is connection. Chronic stress research consistently shows that social support is one of the strongest buffers against the physical and psychological toll of prolonged uncertainty. People navigating this well aren't the ones who feel nothing. They're the ones who aren't navigating it entirely alone.
Whatever your politics, whatever you think about any specific policy, the underlying psychological mechanism here is real, measurable, and worth understanding. Unpredictability is one of the most stressful things a human nervous system can be asked to sit with. And for the past year, a lot of Americans across the political spectrum have been asked to sit with a lot of it. Understanding that doesn't require agreeing about politics. It just requires recognizing what your own nervous system is actually responding to. So instead of just white-knuckling through another anxious scroll session at 2 a.m., you can name what's happening and start doing something about it. If this helped you understand something you've been feeling but couldn't quite name, hit like and subscribe. Every week we dig into the psychology behind the things happening in the world that nobody explains clearly. And I want to know, have you noticed this pattern in yourself or in someone close to you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next one.